My name is Lula Hartman, and I was 32 years old when my engagement ended over a joke that everyone else thought was harmless. At the time, I didn't. I just smiled. I was halfway through cutting into an overpriced steak when it happened. We were at dinner with my fiancé's three closest friends, the kind of women who spoke in inside jokes and Instagram captions, who toasted to soft life and called each other queens while live posting their cocktails. The wedding was already booked for next summer. Deposits paid, guest list drafted. Everyone at the table knew that. One of them, the loudest freshly divorced already on her second glass of wine, leaned back in her chair and laughed. "Don't worry," she said, pointing her fork at me. "He's got a backup plan if you ever mess up." The table erupted. I felt the moment land like a dropped plate, sharp and sudden, but I didn't flinch. I smiled instead, lifted my glass, and said lightly, "Smart planning." That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. My fiancé laughed too. Not awkwardly, not defensively. He laughed comfortably. Then he nodded. "Yeah," he said, still smiling into his wine. "I've thought it through." The words slid under my skin. Across the table, another friend chimed in, already tipsy. "You have to. My cousin didn't. Got screwed in her divorce. Walked away with nothing. You can't be stupid." My fiancé didn't correct her. He nodded again. "I'm not walking away empty-handed if things go south." They toasted to that. I kept eating. Inside my head, everything went quiet, then started calculating. I owned my house outright. Bought it 6 years before I met him. Paid it off myself. It had appreciated almost $200,000 since then. My retirement accounts were built long before our first date. My inheritance from my grandfather sat untouched in a separate account. My car was paid off. My savings were solid. My career was stable. And he had a backup plan. The rest of dinner passed in laughter and wedding chatter. Flowers. Seating arrangements. Someone asked about bridesmaid dresses. I responded when appropriate, nodded. At the right moments, drove us home while he talked happily beside me, already forgetting the conversation entirely. I didn't forget a word. That night, as he fell asleep talking about honeymoon destinations, I stared at the ceiling and realized something cold and clarifying. People don't joke about backup plans unless they've already made one. And in that moment, I understood that whatever he thought marriage was, it wasn't the same thing I thought it was. I called in sick to work the next morning. By the end of the day, I was researching prenup attorneys. I didn't tell anyone I'd called in sick. Not my boss, not my parents, and definitely not Jerry Morrison, the man I was supposed to marry in less than 8 months. He left that morning with a kiss on my cheek, completely unaware that the joke he'd laughed at over dinner had followed me into the daylight and settled there heavy and unignorable. The house was quiet after he left. Too quiet. It made my thoughts louder. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, coffee going cold beside me, typing phrases I never imagined I'd need. Family law attorney consultation, prenup, separate property commingling assets before marriage. Each search result felt like another door opening into a reality I hadn't wanted to consider, but one I could no longer afford to ignore. By noon, I had 3 consultations scheduled. The first lawyer was polite, cautious, almost reassuring in the way she spoke, as if she were afraid of scaring me off. She explained the basics assets acquired before marriage were generally separate, yes, but only if you were careful. If Jerry continued living with me, contributing to utilities, household expenses, renovations, even groceries, there could be arguments made later. Not guaranteed, but possible. The second lawyer was more blunt. "People don't think love and money intersect until they do," he said flatly. "Then it gets ugly." It was the third consultation that changed everything. She was sharp in her early 50s, silver hair, pulled into a no-nonsense bun, eyes that missed nothing. She listened without interrupting while I explained the dinner. The joke, the nod, the words, I've thought it through. When I finished, she leaned back and folded her hands. "You don't need reassurance," she said. "You need protection." She laid it out cleanly. Everything I owned before the marriage could remain mine, but only if it was clearly defined and legally reinforced. The house, the inheritance, retirement accounts built before Jerry ever entered my life, savings, even future appreciation if structured correctly. "A prenup shuts down ambiguity," she said, "and ambiguity is what people exploit." I asked how strong it could be. She smiled slightly. "Very." She explained the requirements: independent counsel for Jerry, no pressure, no rushing. 60 days before the wedding at minimum, 90 to be safe. We could include an infidelity clause. We could limit alimony. We could specify separate accounts during marriage. Anything acquired together would be shared fairly. What I built alone would stay mine. It would cost me $800 up front. I didn't hesitate. The document was 12 pages when it was done. Thorough, precise, almost clinical in how clearly it separated mine, his, and ours. Reading it felt strangely calming, like restoring order to something that had quietly slipped out of balance. That night, I cooked Jerry his favorite meal, chicken marsala the way he liked it. Extra mushroom sauce, reduced just right. I waited until we were seated plates full, the atmosphere normal enough that he wouldn't feel ambushed. "Hey," I said casually. "I've been thinking about something." He looked up. "What's up? Remember your friends joking about backup plans?" He laughed immediately. "Oh my God, yeah. They're ridiculous." "I know," I said, but it got me thinking. His smile faltered just slightly. "I think we should do a prenup." The shift was instant, like a light snapping off behind his eyes. "A prenup," he repeated. "Yeah," I said evenly. "You've got a backup plan. I figured I should probably have some protection too." "That was a joke," he said quickly. "You're still on that." "Were you joking?" I asked. "Because you said you'd thought it through. And you said you weren't walking away empty-handed if things went south. That didn't sound like a joke." Silence stretched between us. "You're serious right now," he said. "Completely." He set his fork down. "Wow. We're planning a wedding, Lula, and you're planning a divorce." "I'm planning for the possibility that your backup plan becomes necessary," I replied. "Seems fair." His face hardened. "You don't trust me." "I don't trust someone who openly admitted to planning for the end before the beginning." "That's not what I meant." "Then signing a prenup that protects what I owned long before you should be easy." He stood abruptly. "I need to talk to my friends." "Take your time," I said. The door hadn't even closed behind him before my phone started buzzing. Group chat notifications. Message after message. Accusations wrapped in concern. Outrage disguised as advice. This is a red flag. He's manipulating you. Financial control is abuse. I read them once, then left the chat entirely. Poured myself a drink. Sat in my quiet house and waited. Jerry came home late. I was already in bed reading when he stood in the doorway, arms crossed, face tight. "My friends think you're trying to control me." "Did you read the prenup?" I asked, not looking up, "or are you just reacting?" "I'll get a lawyer to look at it," he snapped. "Good idea," I said calmly. "I'll pay for the consultation." He stared at me. "Why are you being like this?" "Like what?" "Like someone who's already halfway out the door." I met his eyes then. Like someone who heard her fiancé admit he had a plan for when things fell apart. "You're twisting my words." "I'm repeating them," I said. "Sign it or don't. But there's no wedding without it." The color drained from his face. "You'd really call off the wedding over paperwork." "I'd refuse to marry someone who won't sign paperwork protecting property I owned 6 years before I met him," I said. "One of us is calling it off. You just have to decide who." He didn't answer. But in that silence, I felt it the first real crack. Sharp and unmistakable, running straight through what I thought we were building. Jerry went to his lawyer appointment 3 days later. I knew the moment he walked through the door that it hadn't gone the way he'd hoped. He didn't even take his shoes off, just dropped his keys on the entry table harder than necessary and stood there jaw clenched, eyes flashing, with a mix of anger and something else, panic maybe. The kind that comes when a strategy doesn't work the way you expected it to. "Your prenup is insane," he said flatly. I closed my laptop and looked up at him. "How so?" "It basically says I get nothing." "It says you keep what's yours, I keep what's mine, and we split what we build together," I replied. "That's the opposite of nothing." He scoffed. "Your house alone is worth almost $400,000. "Yes," I said. "A house I bought and paid off 6 years before I met you." "I'll be living there," he shot back, "contributing." "There's no mortgage," I said calmly. "We split utilities and groceries. That doesn't entitle you to equity." "That's not how marriage works." "It's how this marriage works," I said evenly. "Or there isn't one." He paced the living room, running a hand through his hair. "My lawyer says the infidelity clause is punitive." "If you don't cheat," I said, "it doesn't matter." "And the alimony cap?" "You have a job. You're not my retirement plan." He stopped pacing and stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. "You're really not budging." "No," I said, "I'm not." That night the pressure started in earnest. His mother called first. She didn't bother with pleasantries. "What you're doing is cruel," she snapped the moment I answered. "My son is devastated." "He's free to be devastated with a signed prenup or single," I replied. "His choice. You're destroying this family before it even begins." "I'm protecting myself," I said. "There's a difference." She hung up on me. Jerry tried a different approach after that. Tears, late-night apologies, sudden tenderness. He cooked dinner, bought flowers, suggested we reset and stop involving lawyers altogether. I didn't budge. Then came the silent treatment. Days of cold distance, clipped responses, heavy sighs, meant to make me feel unreasonable. I let the silence sit where it belonged. Finally, he broke. Fine, he said one evening, sitting across from me at the kitchen table. I'll sign it. I didn't react, I waited. But he continued, I want something too. I raised an eyebrow. What? Put my name on the house deed, he said. Prove you're actually committed to this marriage. I laughed. Not softly, not politely. I laughed out loud, the sound sharp enough to make him flinch. Absolutely not. Why not, he demanded. Because the prenup explicitly protects my house as separate property, I said. Adding you to the deed contradicts the entire point. Then I'm not signing, he snapped. Then there's no wedding, I replied. He slammed his hand on the table. You're throwing away 2 years over paperwork. No, I said quietly. I am walking away from a marriage where my fiancé only feels secure if he has access to my assets. His face flushed red. That's not fair. It's accurate, I said. He left that night, stayed with one of his friends. Days passed without a word. When he came back, he wasn't alone. They sat across from me, Jerry and his new lawyer, a woman with a designer bag and a tight practiced smile. She spoke first. My client has concerns about this agreement. I'm listening, I said. She went through them point by point. The infidelity clause, the alimony restriction, the house appreciation clause. I declined each one without hesitation. Finally, she turned to Jerry. He's not willing to negotiate. Jerry's voice cracked. Can we at least remove the infidelity clause? Something clicked into place in my chest. Why, I asked softly. He froze. You'd only lose claims to my separate property if you cheated, I continued. You'd still keep what's yours. So why does that clause bother you so much? It's insulting, he said quickly. You're being paranoid. The lawyer gathered her papers. I advised my client not to sign. After they left, I sat alone at my kitchen table and finally admitted what I'd been circling around for weeks. Jerry was never going to sign. He'd been stalling, pressuring, hoping I'd cave or soften or get tired. The backup plan wasn't for if I messed up. It had been there all along, and now I could see it clearly. Jerry came back 3 days later with an overnight bag and a look that told me he thought he'd finally found the right angle. He was calmer, measured, too calm. I've been thinking, he said, setting the bag down by the stairs. Maybe we both escalated things. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Go on. What if we take a break from lawyers? He continued, voice smooth, almost rehearsed. Focus on us. The prenup is just getting in the way. It's not getting in the way, I said. It's revealing what was already there. His jaw tightened, but he pushed through. I'm willing to compromise. You already tried that, I said. It involved my house. He sighed dramatically. You act like I'm trying to steal from you. I'm acting like someone who's paying attention, I replied. He dropped onto a chair and rubbed his face. I just need security, Lula. The word landed heavy. Security from what I asked. From a marriage you're choosing to enter. You've got everything, he snapped. The house, the savings, the inheritance. If this doesn't work out, I walk away with nothing. You walk away with exactly what you came in with, I said. Plus whatever we build together. That's not enough. There it was. The sentence hung between us, naked and undeniable. That's not how partnership works, he added quickly, as if trying to soften it. No, I said quietly. That's how entitlement works. His face hardened. You're twisting this. I'm listening, I said. There's a difference. He stood abruptly. I'll sign the prenup, he said, without changes. I waited. If he added, you add my name to the deed after the wedding. I laughed again. Not because it was funny, but because it finally made sense. So the plan is, I said, slowly sign the prenup, then immediately undermine it. That's not what I'm saying. That's exactly what you're saying, I replied. You don't want a marriage. You want access. He slammed his fist into the wall. You're impossible. And you're transparent, I said. I just didn't want to see it before. That night he left for good. The next morning I canceled the wedding. The venue deposit alone was $2,000. The caterer, the photographer, the florist, the DJ. By the time I added it all up, I was out about $4,500. I didn't hesitate. Best money I ever spent. I texted him one line, wedding's off. You have until the end of the month to move out. He showed up an hour later with all 3 of his friends. They marched into my living room like an intervention squad, faces set, arms crossed, already convinced I was the villain. You can't just cancel a wedding, one of them said. Already did, I replied. We need to talk this through. No, I said, we really don't. Jerry's voice broke. Please, forget the prenup. We can fix this. I really looked at him, and felt absolutely nothing. You had months, I said. You brought in an expensive lawyer. You tried to get on my deed. That told me everything. His real estate-obsessed friend stepped forward. He deserves security. He has security, I said calmly. A job. His savings. What he doesn't deserve is my house. That's not how marriage works. It's not how this marriage was going to work, I replied. And now there is no marriage. Jerry tried again, voice cracking. I'll sign whatever you want. Please. I shook my head. Too late. What does that even mean? He asked. It means your backup plan was access to my assets, I said. And now it's gone. Silence filled the room. You have 3 weeks, I added. That's generous. I walked them to the door myself and closed it. For the first time since that dinner, the house felt like mine again. I underestimated how ugly things could get once Jerry realized he wasn't getting his way. The first wave was noise, texts, calls, messages from numbers I didn't recognize. Friends of his I'd barely spoken to suddenly had strong opinions about my character. His mother left voicemails that bounced between fury and martyrdom. Distant relatives accused me of destroying a good man over money, as if money hadn't been exactly what this had always been about. I blocked everyone except my own family. That didn't stop him. 2 days after the confrontation, Jerry showed up at my office. I didn't even see him at first. Security called my desk to ask if I knew a man in the lobby, demanding to speak with me, insisting it was a personal emergency. When I stepped out and saw him pacing near the front doors, tie-loosened eyes wild, something inside me hardened permanently. I didn't speak to him. Security did. They escorted him out while he shouted that I was being unreasonable, that I was ruining our lives, that this wasn't over. My coworkers stared. I felt the humiliation burn for exactly 5 seconds, then it faded, replaced by clarity. That afternoon, he sent an email accusing me of withholding his belongings. I replied once, short, clinical. Everything he owned was boxed neatly in the garage. He could collect it with notice. He didn't respond. Instead, he hired another attorney. The demand letter arrived 2 days later, claiming I was illegally evicting him. My lawyer laughed when I forwarded it. He's a guest, she said. No lease. You gave 30 days. They've got nothing. And just like that, that threat disappeared. Jerry wasn't done. A week later, police officers knocked on my door. Someone had filed a report claiming I'd stolen jewelry. I stood there calmly, while they explained the complaint, then pulled up text messages on my phone, messages from Jerry himself confirming he'd taken all his valuables when he left. The officers read them, nodded, apologized for the inconvenience, and left. The next accusation was almost impressive in its audacity. He claimed partial ownership of my car because he'd paid for 2 oil changes. My lawyer shut that down in one email. Then came the narrative shift. Jerry started telling people I'd been financially abusive, that I controlled the money, that I made him feel powerless. I had bank statements. We'd split utilities, split groceries, split household expenses. I'd paid for every vacation, every dinner out, every major purchase. The truth didn't just contradict his story, it buried it. That was when his father showed up. Big man, loud voice, thought he could scare me into backing down. You owe my son for the wedding, he said, standing on my porch like he owned it. I paid the deposits, I replied. He contributed nothing. He gave up his apartment to move in with you. His lease was ending, I said. He lived here rent-free for 9 months. He called me trash. I told him to get off my property. They came for Jerry's things that afternoon. He sobbed through the entire process. While his father loaded boxes into the car, I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just a strange, steady calm. A few weeks later, the truth finished surfacing. Through mutual friends, I learned Jerry had been keeping in touch with his ex-girlfriend throughout our engagement. Coffee meetings, long talks, emotional check-ins. Nothing physical, supposedly, but enough to explain why the infidelity clause terrified him. The backup plan hadn't just been financial. There'd been a person, too. The final attempt came in legal language. His newest attorney sent a letter claiming he was owed compensation for household maintenance, something called quantum meruit. My lawyer's response was devastating. She itemized every expense we'd split evenly, every receipt, every payment. She asked one simple question. What exactly did he contribute that hadn't already been reimbursed? We never heard back. Jerry moved back in with his parents. His friend group imploded. 2 of them started dating the same man. His expensive lawyer dropped him when he couldn't pay, and the story he told about me changed every time someone asked. None of it mattered anymore. The house was quiet again, and for the first time in months, that quiet felt like peace. Silence didn't come all at once. At first, it arrived in fragments, fewer messages, longer gaps between new accusations, days, where my phone stayed face down on the counter without lighting up. Each quiet stretch felt tentative, like the calm after a storm when you're not sure if the worst has actually passed. Then one morning I realized I hadn't thought about Jerry in hours. That's when I knew it was over. The last message I ever received from him came from a number I didn't recognize. No greeting, No apology, just one sentence. I hope you're happy. You destroyed us over money. I stared at the screen for a long moment before typing my reply. I protected myself from someone who admitted to having a backup plan. You destroyed us by having one. Then I blocked the number. My mother asked me later if I regretted any of it. Losing the deposits, ending the engagement so abruptly, standing firm when everyone else told me I was being cruel. Not even a little, I told her. My father was less gentle. He wanted your house, he said, not you. That sentence settled something inside me. I started hearing things through the grapevine after that. Jerry telling people I'd tricked him with the prenup, that I'd manipulated him into refusing it so I could cancel the wedding and keep his deposits, the deposits he never paid. The logic was twisted, but it tracked. Accountability had never been his strength. A few weeks later, a friend mentioned he'd tried to add me on social media. Long message attached. Regret. Reflection. A desire to talk things through like adults. I ignored it. Blocked the request. Some conversations don't need closure, they need distance. With Jerry gone, I started reclaiming small things. I repainted the bedroom first. He'd chosen a dull beige that always made the room feel smaller than it was. I went with navy blue instead. Deep, calm, solid. My house, my rules. The space changed with me. Furniture shifted. The silence deepened. It no longer felt lonely. It felt intentional. Someone asked me once if I'd ever get married after all that. Maybe, I said, but only to someone who doesn't need a backup plan. Because that's the thing people don't like to admit. Backup plans aren't about safety, they're about exit strategies, about keeping one foot out the door while pretending to commit. I wasn't interested in that anymore. I had my house, my savings, my inheritance untouched, my retirement secure, my peace intact. And I didn't have a fiancé whose friends joked about how he'd take my things if things went wrong. That alone felt like winning. The house sounds different when it belongs to you again. Not legally, I'd always owned it, but in the way that matters. In the way walls stop holding other people's expectations. In the way the air feels lighter when no one is waiting for you to compromise yourself just to keep the peace. I noticed it late one night standing in the doorway of the freshly painted bedroom. The navy walls absorbed the light softly like they were meant to be that color all along. The beige was gone. So was the faint, constant tension I hadn't realized I'd been living with. Jerry was gone too. Not just physically, mentally, emotionally. The version of him I'd thought I loved, the man I believed I was building a future with, had finally dissolved under the weight of his own words. Backup plan, security, not enough. People show you who they are when they think you're not paying attention. I replayed that dinner, sometimes not with anger, but with clarity. The nod, the laughter, the confidence with which he'd admitted he'd already planned his exit before the wedding invitations were even mailed. I'd spent weeks wondering if I'd overreacted, if I'd been too harsh, too rigid, too unwilling to compromise. Now I knew better. Compromise is about meeting in the middle. What he wanted was to start on my side. Every so often, someone would still bring him up. A mutual acquaintance, a well-meaning coworker, someone fishing for drama. They'd say his name carefully like they were testing whether it still hurt. It didn't. What hurt would have been marrying someone who saw my life's work as his safety net. What would have hurt would have been waking up years later, untangling finances from someone who'd already decided what he was owed. I didn't dodge a bullet. I stepped out of the way before it was fired. On a Sunday morning a few months later, I sat on my back porch with coffee and watched the sunlight hit the yard. No rush, no agenda. No voice in my head reminding me to soften, to give in, to prove I was committed by giving something up. Commitment doesn't start with surrender. It starts with honesty. People asked what lesson I took from it all. If I had advice. I kept it simple. If someone jokes about backup plans, believe them. If they refuse a fair prenup, believe that too. If they want access to what you built before they ever showed up, ask yourself why. Your hard work is not someone else's retirement fund. Your house is not their plan B. And love that requires leverage isn't love, it's a transaction. I locked the door that night, turned off the lights, and stood for a moment in the quiet. The house was still. It was mine. And that was exactly how it should be. My name is Erica Great, and I'm 35 years old. I used to believe that if a marriage survived 6 years shared bills and quiet weeknights on the couch, it was solid enough to withstand anything. I was wrong, but not in the loud, dramatic way people expect. It didn't break with screaming or slammed doors. It broke with a lie so casual it almost slipped past me. My husband and I had been married for 6 years. No kids yet. Honestly, I wasn't rushing it. We both worked full-time. He was in event planning, long hours, unpredictable schedules. I worked in software development, steady, structured, logical. We balanced each other, or at least that's what I told myself. We bought our house 3 years ago. Mortgage split evenly. Comfortable, adult, responsible. Boring in the best way. Last Thursday started exactly like that, boringly normal. Around 6:00 p.m., I texted him from my office. New Italian place downtown just opened. Want to grab dinner? A few minutes later, his reply came in. Feeling awful. Think I'm coming down with something. Going to stay in bed tonight. Order whatever you want, babe. I didn't question it. Why would people get sick? Husbands get tired. I felt bad for even suggesting dinner. On my way home, I stopped at the grocery store and grabbed soup, crackers, ginger tea, the small automatic acts of care you don't even think about when you trust someone. I got home around 7:30 p.m. The house was quiet. Too quiet maybe, but I assumed he was asleep. I set the soup on the counter and texted him. I got you soup. You okay? No response. 8 o'clock passed. Then 8:20. Finally a reply. Still at the office, wrapping up. Heading home now. Feeling worse. Might go straight to bed. It didn't bother me. Not then. I ate alone, watched TV, folded laundry. Around 9:15 p.m., I heard the front door. He walked in, barely looked at me, muttered that he felt awful and went straight upstairs. Bedroom door closed, locked. I remember thinking it was strange locking the door, but I brushed it off. People want space when they're sick. I stayed downstairs not wanting to bother him. At 10:30 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was my mother. Is this your husband? A photo followed. The image didn't make sense at first. My brain refused to process it. Then it did all at once. There he was, not sick, not in bed, wearing a fitted black shirt I'd never seen before, a drink in his hand, another woman's hands on his waist, smiling, laughing. The background unmistakable, the VIP section of one of the most expensive clubs downtown. I stared at that photo for a long time. Long enough for something inside me to go very still. I went upstairs. The bedroom door was locked. I knocked once. Hey, you awake? No answer. Again louder. Are you okay? Silence. I used a thin key from my tea set to unlock the door. The room was empty. The window was open. That's when it clicked. He didn't just lie. He planned this. The sickness, the locked door, the open window, sneaking out like a teenager instead of facing his wife. Something snapped, but not in anger. It was clarity, cold and absolute. I went to the garage, pulled out every suitcase we owned, and started packing. Clothes, shoes, toiletries, everything. It took about 90 minutes. I dragged all 4 suitcases to the curb, lined them neatly under the streetlight, and took a photo. I texted him. Sleep anywhere but here. Attached the photo. Then I attached the club photo my mom sent. Mom says hi. I changed the locks that night. Paid a 24-hour locksmith without blinking. Disabled his access to everything garage code, smart lock, fingerprint app. When he came back at 2:45 a.m., I watched through the camera as confusion turned into panic. I didn't open the door. For the first time in months, I slept deeply. And I had no idea how much worse things were about to get. I woke up Friday morning to a strange kind of quiet. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that feels like the air itself is waiting to see what you'll do next. For a split second, I wondered if the night before had been a dream. Then I checked the cameras. The suitcases were gone. I didn't feel relief. I felt confirmation. Apparently, sometime around 4:00 a.m., my husband had come back with his sister and loaded everything into her car. No note, no apology, no attempt to talk, just damage control. It was exactly the kind of move I'd come to recognize too late, avoid accountability, minimize retreat to family. I got ready for work like it was any other Friday. Showered, coffee, laptop bag over my shoulder. The routine steadied me. Normalcy can be a form of armor. Around 10 a.m., my phone started lighting up with calls from unknown numbers. I ignored them. Then my office phone rang. Reception. Erica, your husband is here. He's in the lobby. He's insisting on seeing you. My chest tightened, but my voice stayed calm. He's not authorized to be here. Please have security escort him out. I pulled up the security feed on my screen, watched him argue, watched him gesture wildly, pointing toward the elevators like sheer entitlement might override policy. When security threatened to call the police, he finally left, throwing one last look back like I'd betrayed him. At lunch, my mother called. "You're not going to believe this," she said, already halfway through a laugh. "His mother just called me screaming that I ruined her son's marriage by sending you that photo." And I asked. I told her maybe her son shouldn't have been grinding on another woman while pretending to be sick at home. I laughed then. A real laugh. Short, sharp, necessary. That afternoon, the messages started coming in from people who weren't in my marriage but felt entitled to opinions about it. His best friend. His cousin. Someone I barely knew from a barbecue 3 years ago. The tone was always the same. "You overreacted. It was just dancing. You humiliated him. You're being cold," I replied once. "He lied about being sick. Snuck out a window. Let another woman put her hands all over him. But sure, I'm the problem." Then I blocked them. Saturday morning at exactly 9:00 a.m., pounding rattled my front door. I checked the camera. My husband, his sister, his mother. All three looked ready for war. I opened the door, but kept the chain on. His mother spoke first. "You need to let him back in. This is his home." "No," I said evenly. "It's my house. I bought it before the marriage. He contributes to the mortgage. That doesn't give him the right to lie, sneak out, and disrespect me." My husband stepped forward, eyes already glossy. "Erica, please. We need to talk. I made a mistake." "You didn't make a mistake," I said. "You made a plan." His sister scoffed. "You're being dramatic. He went dancing." He lied, snuck out a window, locked himself in the bedroom to maintain the lie. The dancing is just the cherry on top. His mother's voice sharpened. "We'll call the police." "Go ahead," I said. "Explain how your son abandoned the marital home after being caught lying." They didn't move. Then he tried again. Softer this time. "I'll change. I love you." "You love me enough to lie to my face and climb out a window," I replied. "We're done." I closed the door. They stayed outside, yelling for 15 minutes before leaving. Sunday was quieter. Too quiet. A few more messages. All blocked. Then, around 3:00 p.m., an email landed in my inbox. From a lawyer, demanding I allow my husband back into the marital home within 48 hours or face legal action. I forwarded it to a divorce attorney I'd consulted with on Friday. She called me within the hour. "So she said the house is solely in your name." "Yes." "Good. His lawyer is bluffing. I recommend we file first." "Do it." Monday morning, the paperwork was filed. By Monday evening, the tone of the messages changed. Threats. "You'll regret this. I'll take you for everything." I forwarded every single one to my lawyer. She sounded almost pleased. "Excellent," she said. "Keep documenting." That was when I realized something important. This wasn't about reconciliation. This was about punishment. And he wasn't done yet. By Tuesday morning, the adrenaline had worn off, leaving behind something heavier focus. I stopped reacting emotionally and started treating everything like a case file. Screenshots, call logs, security footage, dates and timestamps. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't send long messages. I let the paper trail speak for me. That turned out to be the smartest thing I could have done. My lawyer walked me through the next steps with a calm, almost clinical precision. Divorce filed. Grounds cited irreconcilable differences and abandonment of the marital home. The irony wasn't lost on me. He left, but somehow I was being accused of cruelty. By Monday afternoon, he was officially served at his sister's place. By Monday night, my phone was exploding again. This time, the messages weren't pleading. They were hostile. "You think you're so smart. I'm not going to let you ruin my life. You started a war." I didn't respond. I forwarded everything to my lawyer, who replied with a single sentence. "Keep them coming." 2 weeks later, we were in court. His lawyer filed an emergency motion demanding temporary spousal support and exclusive use of the house, claimed my husband was financially dependent on me, claimed I'd made him homeless out of spite, claimed emotional cruelty. My lawyer countered calmly. She presented proof of his income, proof that he worked full-time and earned a respectable salary, proof that he left the home voluntarily after being caught lying, proof that the house was my premarital property purchased years before we married. The judge listened without interrupting. Then he turned to his lawyer. "Let me understand this," the judge said. "Your client lied about being ill, left the home under false pretenses, was photographed in a compromising position with another woman, and now claims entitlement to property he does not own." His lawyer stammered something about marital contribution and good faith residence. The judge shook his head. Motion denied. He ordered my husband to pay his own legal fees for the frivolous filing. Temporary spousal support was granted $800 a month. Modest, manageable. My lawyer leaned toward me and whispered that it was lower than expected. I exhaled for the first time in days. Outside the courtroom, his mother approached me, tears streaming down her face, voice trembling. "You're destroying my son," she cried. "He's broken because of you." I looked at her steadily. He broke himself when he chose to lie and disrespect his marriage. I just stopped pretending it was okay. She lunged at me, tried to slap me. She missed. Security saw everything, escorted her out. My lawyer immediately requested a witness statement. That was when I knew this wasn't just messy anymore. It was going to get ugly. And the worst part, I could feel it. The retaliation hadn't even started yet. The first sign that things were about to spiral came on a Friday evening, 2 weeks after the court hearing. I pulled into my driveway just after sunset and immediately knew something was wrong. The front door was open. Wide open. Not cracked, not unlocked. Open. My stomach dropped. I didn't go inside. I called the police from my car, hands shaking just enough to notice. They arrived within minutes, swept the house, and found no forced entry, no broken windows, no damaged locks. But someone had been inside. The bathroom was trashed. Towels dumped into the tub. Trash scattered across the kitchen floor. My bedroom closet emptied hangers clattering across the hardwood like evidence of rage. The officers asked if anyone else had access. I didn't say his name. I didn't need to. They filed a report, told me without proof there was little they could do. But the report mattered. My lawyer wanted it immediately. The cameras showed nothing. Whoever did this knew exactly where they were and where they weren't. I changed the locks again that night. Added interior cameras. Cost me $600. Worth every cent. Saturday morning, I walked outside to find my car vandalized. Deep scratches down both sides. The word liar carved into the hood. Another police report. Insurance claim. Dash cams installed front and back. Sunday, my boss called. Someone had filed an anonymous HR complaint accusing me of embezzlement and sexual harassment. It was baseless. Completely fabricated. HR investigated, found nothing, closed it. But sitting in that office, explaining myself, proving innocence, I shouldn't have had to prove it drained something from me. Then came Monday. The police called. My husband had filed a report claiming I'd stolen his jewelry collection, $15,000 worth, according to him. I went to the station, gave a statement, showed them the photos of the suitcases, the timestamps, the messages, explained he had taken everything the night he left. The officer looked skeptical, but procedure is procedure. 3 hours later, I walked out exhausted. My lawyer called the next morning. They're trying to provoke you, she said. They want you to react. Don't. I didn't. Wednesday, a settlement offer arrived. He wanted half the house, half my retirement, 3 years of spousal support. His car payments covered. My lawyer laughed out loud. Absolutely not. Thursday was quiet. Friday morning, my mother called. You're not going to like this, she said. His lawyer subpoenaed me. For what? For the club photo. They're claiming I stalked him. I nearly dropped my phone. A club isn't private, I said. And you weren't stalking anyone. I know, she replied, but this tells you how desperate they are. I hung up and stared at the wall. This wasn't about heartbreak. This was about control. And he was losing it. By the time the final hearing arrived, I felt strangely calm. Not numb, prepared. Every attempt to intimidate me, every false claim, every petty act of retaliation had done the opposite of what my husband intended. He thought chaos would weaken me. Instead, it clarified everything. The courtroom was quiet in that sterile, indifferent way that makes emotions feel small and exposed. My husband sat at the opposite table, shoulders stiff, jaw clenched, eyes fixed anywhere but on me. His mother and sister sat behind him, whispering sharply, already braced for a fight they didn't realize they'd lost weeks ago. My lawyer stood and began methodically. Not dramatically, not emotionally, chronologically. She laid out the lie about being sick, the locked bedroom door, the open window, the club photo, the suitcases, the changed locks, then the aftermath harassment messages, workplace confrontation, the denied emergency motion, the home intrusion, the vandalized car, the false HR complaint, the jewelry theft report, the subpoena against my mother. Each piece alone might have sounded messy. Together they painted a pattern of deception, entitlement, and escalation when control was denied. His lawyer tried to spin it, claimed emotional abandonment, claimed I overreacted to a harmless night out, claimed his client was seeking comfort, not betrayal. The judge listened, then leaned forward. "Sir," he said, looking directly at my husband, "did you lie to your wife about being ill?" My husband hesitated. "Yes." "Did you leave the marital home without her knowledge?" Another pause. "Yes." "And did you engage in intimate physical contact with another woman at a nightclub that night?" He swallowed. "Yes." The judge nodded slowly, as if confirming something he already knew. Final ruling came swiftly. No claim to the house. It was my premarital property. Mortgage contributions were considered rent. No division of retirement accounts. Each of us kept our own. The joint savings, $8,000, split evenly. Spousal support remained at $800 a month for 1 year. No extensions. When the judge finished, my husband broke down. Tears. Shaking. His lawyer requested reconsideration. Denied. Outside the courtroom, his mother screamed at me again. His sister joined in. Security stepped in before it escalated further. I didn't respond. I walked out. For the first time since that Thursday night, I knew without doubt that this was over. Not just legally, emotionally. It's strange how quiet life becomes after chaos finally exhausts itself. 2 months after I dragged those suitcases to the curb, the divorce was officially finalized. No more hearings. No more emails from lawyers. No more late-night anxiety about what accusation might come next. Just a signed judgment and a clean break. The harassment stopped almost immediately. My lawyer told me his had likely warned him that any further antics could result in contempt charges. Whatever the reason, the noise disappeared, and in its place came something unfamiliar. Peace. The house felt different without him. Not empty or lighter. I repainted the bedroom first. New color, new furniture. I wanted no physical reminders of a marriage built on half-truths. I changed the layout of the living room, donated what I didn't want, kept only what felt like mine. I started therapy. Not because I missed him, but because betrayal rewires your instincts. I caught myself questioning small things, wondering if people were lying when there was no reason to doubt them. My therapist said it was normal. Trust doesn't break loudly. It fractures quietly, then echoes. My mother still apologizes for sending that photo. I keep telling her the same thing she gave me the truth. That's not something to regret. She admitted she'd noticed his behavior shifting months before too much phone secrecy excuses to leave early, unfamiliar cologne. She didn't say anything without proof. The club photo was proof. I lost some friends, the ones who believed his version without asking questions. I don't miss them. The circle is smaller now, but solid. That matters more. Work stabilized. HR officially expunged the false complaint. My boss wrote a letter stating it was malicious and baseless. The car was repaired. Cameras installed everywhere. My life became boring again. And that's the point. Financially, the spousal support stings, but it's temporary. $800 a month for a year. Manageable. A small price for clarity. I've dated casually. Nothing serious. I'm not rushing. Trust takes time, and I'm okay with that. I'd rather be alone than doubt my own reality again. The satisfaction isn't dramatic. There's no triumphant music. It's waking up without dread. It's coming home without tension. It's knowing I chose dignity over denial. He thought he could lie, sneak, manipulate, and return when caught. Thought consequences were optional. He was wrong. I didn't win because he lost. I won because I stopped betraying myself. My name is Amber Johnson, and I was 31 years old when my engagement ended over a plate of half-eaten pasta. 4 months. That's how far away the wedding was supposed to be. The venue had been booked. Invitations, designed, deposits, paid, honeymoon, scheduled down to the hour. On paper, my life looked settled, stable, and enviably on track. I had been with Charles Leighty for 3 years, engaged for 8 months, and until that Tuesday night, I truly believed that we were building something permanent. We were sitting at the small round table in his apartment, the one he insisted felt more intimate than a dining table. Candle lit, wine poured, everything normal enough that I didn't sense the floor about to give out beneath me. He kept pushing his pasta around with his fork, not really eating, not really looking at me either. "I need to talk to you about something," he said finally. Those words landed heavy in my chest. Nothing good ever starts that way. I felt it immediately. That subtle drop in the stomach, the instinctive warning your body gives you before your mind catches up. "I've been thinking a lot lately," he continued. I didn't interrupt, I just waited. "I love you," Charles said too quickly. "I really do. But I'm not ready to marry you yet." The room seemed to tilt. I set my fork down carefully, like any sudden movement might shatter what little balance I had left. "What do you mean?" I asked. He exhaled, rubbing his hands together like he'd rehearsed this part. "I mean, I've only ever been in one serious relationship as an adult. You. And one woman back in college. I need to know if this is really what I want. If you're really the one." "We're engaged," I said slowly. "We've been planning a wedding." "I know," he replied, nodding. "And that's why I need to figure this out now, before we're legally tied together." I felt my pulse in my ears. "Figure what out?" "I want to date other people first," he said. "Just for a few months. See what else is out there." There it was, clear, unmistakable. I stared at him. So you want to sleep with other women and then decide if you want to marry me? Don't make it sound so crude, he snapped. I just need to explore my options. You're the only serious relationship I've had. What if I marry you and always wonder what I missed? The audacity of it was almost impressive. Then break up with me, I said. No, he replied immediately. I don't want to break up. I just want to break. A pause. We can still be engaged, just not exclusive for a bit. I felt something inside me go very, very still. So let me get this straight, I said calmly. You want an open relationship for a few months. I'm supposed to wait while you date around. And if you decide I'm good enough, we get married. It's not like that, he insisted. You can date too if you want. It's only fair. I don't want to date other people, I said. I chose you. That's what engagement means to me. He sighed, frustration creeping into his voice. You're being close-minded. Lots of couples do this. It's healthy. My therapist even said I should be honest about my needs. That part hurt more than I expected. Not because he'd talked to a therapist, but because he'd talked to her for weeks. Planned this, thought it through, and still believed I'd just accept it. Okay, I said. He blinked. Okay, I understand, I replied. Thanks for being honest. I stood, grabbed my jacket. Where are you going? He asked. Home, I need to think. But we're not done talking. Yes, we are, I said. Meeting his eyes for the first time since the conversation began. You've made your position clear. Now I need to figure out mine. I left before he could say anything else. That was the moment everything ended. I just didn't cancel it yet. I drove home in silence, hands steady on the wheel, eyes fixed on the road like muscle memory was the only thing keeping me upright. The city lights blurred past me. Familiar streets, suddenly feeling foreign, like I was moving through a life that had already ended without bothering to tell me. I parked, went upstairs, and walked into my apartment at a little after 9. I didn't turn on the television. I didn't check my phone. I just sat on the couch and stared at the wall. For a long time, nothing happened. Then slowly the shock began to lift, not replaced by hysteria or rage, but by something colder, clearer. It was the kind of clarity that doesn't feel dramatic when it arrives. It just settles in heavy and undeniable. Charles didn't want to marry me. Not really. He wanted me on standby. A guarantee. A safe place to return to after he'd confirmed there was nothing better waiting out there. And if I agreed to that even silently, even temporarily, I would be telling him that my place in his life was conditional. Optional. Replaceable. That thought hardened into resolve. I picked up my phone and started making calls. First, the venue. I explained that the wedding was canceled. The coordinator was kind, almost practiced in her sympathy. She told me I'd lose the $2,000 deposit, but avoid the remaining balance. I thanked her, hung up, and wrote the number down in my notes like it was a business transaction, not the dismantling of a future I'd been building for years. Next, the jeweler. I still had the receipt. The ring had never been resized. They agreed to take it back for an 85% refund. I'd lose some money, but I'd get most of it back. It felt strange how little that bothered me. The ring had stopped being a symbol the moment Charles asked for permission to step outside the commitment it represented. Caterer, photographer, florist. One by one, the deposits disappeared. Money gone, yes, but with every cancellation, something else lifted. A weight, an expectation, a lie I would no longer have to carry. By midnight, everything was done. I had lost a little over $4,000 in deposits. I had saved myself tens of thousands more and something far more valuable than money. Then I blocked him. His number, his social media, every possible avenue of access. I changed my locks. Not because I was afraid of him, but because I didn't want the illusion of shared space lingering where it no longer belonged. I sent a single message to my family and close friends. Short, controlled, honest. The wedding is off. Charles told me he wants to date other women before committing. I'm handling it. I need space. That was it. No embellishment, no defense, no apology. I slept better that night than I had in weeks. The next morning, my phone lit up like a warning signal. Missed calls, voicemails, unknown numbers. I didn't listen to any of them. I didn't need to. I already knew what they would say. Confusion, regret, backtracking disguised as reflection. A week later, the knock came. I opened the door to find Melissa Charles's closest friend standing there with a tight smile and concern carefully arranged across her face. I'd seen that expression before, usually, when someone had already decided you were the villain, but needed you to play along anyway. We need to talk, she said. No, we don't, I replied. She's devastated, Melissa continued, stepping forward as if proximity might soften my resolve. You blocked her. She can't reach you. That was intentional, she frowned. Don't you think you're overreacting? She was just being honest about her feelings. You're punishing her for being vulnerable. I studied her for a moment, genuinely curious how someone could twist reality so cleanly. She told me she wanted to date other women before marrying me. I canceled the wedding and moved on. That's not punishment. That's consequence. She didn't mean it like that, Melissa insisted. She was scared. Pre-wedding jitters. Then she should have said she was scared, I replied evenly. Not that she wanted to explore her options. You're being cruel. Am I asked, or am I just not agreeing to be a backup plan? Her mouth opened, then closed. I could see her recalibrating, shifting strategies. She loves you, she said softly. She made a mistake. Just talk to her. I heard everything I needed to hear, I said. Tell her to lose my number. I closed the door before she could say anything else. That night, a message came from Charles's mother. Polite, diplomatic, carefully worded concern about how upset her child was, and whether we could meet for coffee to talk things through calmly. I replied once. With respect, your daughter told me she wasn't ready to marry me and wanted to date other women. I took her seriously. There's nothing to discuss. She responded that Charles had been crying for days, that he didn't mean to break up, that he just needed reassurance. I typed back slowly. He wanted me to wait while he tested the market. I'm not interested in being someone's safety net. There was no reply after that. What struck me most wasn't the breakup itself, it was the expectation, the unspoken belief that I would negotiate my dignity to preserve his comfort, that I would chase him, convince him, prove myself worthy of being chosen. But I wasn't 21 anymore. I was 31, and I had heard him clearly the first time. I underestimated how loud silence can be when other people decide to fill it for you. The first few days after Melissa showed up at my door were oddly calm. Painful, yes, but private. I went to work, answered emails, ate meals I barely tasted, and came home to an apartment that already felt like it belonged to someone else. I told myself that was enough, that I didn't owe anyone explanations beyond the truth I'd already given. I was wrong. It started with messages from mutual friends, casual at first. Hey, just checking in. Then gradually more pointed. Are you okay? Charles is really struggling. This seems extreme. Extreme. As if calling off a wedding after your fiancé asked to date other women was some kind of impulsive tantrum rather than a rational response. One evening, a coworker pulled me aside after a meeting. I didn't want to say anything. She began carefully. But I heard you called off the wedding because Charles suggested couples therapy. I actually laughed. It slipped out before I could stop it, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. That's not what happened, I said. Well, that's what people are saying. That was the moment I realized the story was being rewritten, and I wasn't the author anymore. According to the new version making its way around, Charles hadn't asked to date other women. He'd simply been overwhelmed. He'd wanted therapy, support, reassurance, and I apparently had panicked and disappeared. Cold, unforgiving, emotionally unavailable. I corrected people when I could. Calmly, factually, no emotion attached. He asked to date other women before committing. I said no and canceled the wedding. Some nodded in understanding. Others tilted their heads, skepticism already settling in. It was easier for them to believe the softer version, the one where commitment anxiety was understandable and my refusal to accommodate it was framed as cruelty. My mother didn't hesitate. She asked for what she demanded when I told her the full story over the phone. I repeated it word for word. There was a pause. Then, that girl has some nerve. You did the right thing. Hearing that steadied me more than I expected. Not because I needed permission, but because it confirmed what I already knew. I hadn't imagined the disrespect. I hadn't exaggerated it. I had simply responded to it. The misinformation didn't stop. One afternoon, I was cornered in the produce section of a grocery store by a woman I recognized as one of Charles's friends. She didn't bother with pleasantries. You know he's been having panic attacks, right? She said. I blinked. Because of me? Because you blocked him. Disappeared. He was trying to communicate his feelings and you punished him for it. I met her gaze steadily. He communicated that he wanted to date other women. I took him seriously. He was scared she snapped. He needed reassurance. He needed permission, I replied calmly. I declined to give it. She looked at me like I was heartless, like I was missing something obvious. It wouldn't have been cheating if you agreed, she said. Exactly, I said, and I didn't agree. That seemed to frustrate her more than anger ever could. as if my refusal to participate in the moral gymnastics of the situation was the real offense. "So you just decided it was over?" she pressed. "No," I corrected. "He decided it was over when he asked to step outside the commitment. I just didn't pretend otherwise." She scoffed and walked away, shaking her head. What unsettled me wasn't the confrontation, it was the pattern. Over and over, the same expectations surfaced in different forms. That I should have softened, that I should have waited, that I should have proven my love by tolerating something that made me feel small. No one asked how it felt to realize the person you planned to marry saw you as an option. They only asked why I wouldn't fight to keep him. The irony was staggering. I wasn't fighting because there was nothing to fight for. Not anymore. Love that requires self-erasure isn't love, it's fear dressed up as loyalty. And I refused to wear it. By the third week, the noise around me had reached a steady hum, persistent, irritating, impossible to ignore completely. I had stopped correcting every version of the story floating around because I was tired. Not of defending myself, but of realizing how eager people were to believe the version where I was wrong for refusing to compromise my dignity. It was easier for them that way. The real shock came on a Saturday night. I was out with a couple of friends at a bar near the stadium, the kind of place where the TVs are always tuned to whatever game is on and no one expects emotional confrontations. I hadn't planned to stay long. I just wanted background noise, something ordinary, something that didn't ask me to explain myself. Halfway through the first quarter, one of my friends stiffened beside me. "Amber," she said quietly, nodding toward the entrance. "Is that—" I looked up. Charles had just walked in with another woman. She was tall, confident, the kind of effortlessly put together that suggested intention. They didn't sit at the bar. They chose a table 2 rows over, close enough to be seen, but not close enough to be accidental. Almost immediately, I felt his eyes flick in my direction, checking, measuring, waiting for a reaction. I didn't give him one. We went back to the game, but I could feel the tension coiling across the room. 20 minutes later, he stood up and walked past our table on the way to the restroom. He slowed just slightly and stopped beside me. "Hi," he said. I looked up. "Hi. Can we talk?" I glanced toward his table. "I don't think the woman you came with would appreciate that." "She's not my date," he said quickly. "She's just a friend." I nodded. "Okay." He waited. I didn't fill the silence. "So, you're really just done?" he asked. "You're not even going to hear me out?" "I heard you 3 weeks ago," I replied evenly. "You were very clear." "I was confused," he said. "I made a mistake." "Okay." That was all I said. Not because I didn't have more words, but because none of them would change anything. "That's it," he pressed. 3 years and that's all you've got. What do you want me to say?" I asked. "You wanted to date other women. You're here with another woman. You're getting exactly what you asked for." "She's just a friend," he repeated, his voice tightening. "It doesn't matter to me either way," I said. "We're not engaged anymore." That seemed to hit him harder than anything else. His expression shifted confusion, giving way to something like panic. "You're really throwing everything away because I had one moment of doubt." "You didn't have doubt," I said quietly. "You had a plan. You talked about this for weeks. That's not panic. That's intention." He opened his mouth, then closed it. "I was wrong," he said finally. "But I still love you." "Maybe," I replied, "but you didn't respect me." His eyes filled with tears, and for a moment I saw the version of him I'd loved, the vulnerable one, the one I used to protect. But vulnerability without accountability is just another form of manipulation. His companion approached, then clearly uncomfortable. "Everything okay?" she asked. "We're fine," I said, standing. He was just leaving. Charles stared at me like he was waiting for permission, for forgiveness, for something. He didn't get it. As he walked away, my friends stared at me in stunned silence. "That was cold," one of them said. "Was it?" I asked. "He brought another woman to a place he knew I'd be. That wasn't an accident. That was a test." "And you didn't bite," another added. "No," I said. "I stopped playing." Later that night, a message came through from an unknown number. "You're heartless. He loved you. You'll regret this when you're alone." I blocked it without replying. What struck me most wasn't the insult, it was the expectation behind it. The belief that I should still be emotionally available to someone who had already stepped halfway out the door. That my role was to wait to hope to compete. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. 5 weeks after the dinner that ended, everything Charles showed up at my apartment. I hadn't seen him since the bar. I hadn't heard his voice. I'd managed to exist in a careful balance, functional, composed, still tender in places I didn't touch too often. I thought the worst was over. That the distance had finally taught him what my silence hadn't. I was wrong. He knocked like someone who believed persistence could substitute for permission. Sharp, urgent raps that echoed down the hallway. I ignored the first few minutes, hoping he'd leave. Then my neighbor shouted through the wall that she'd call the police if the noise didn't stop. "I know you're in there," Charles called out. "Please, just talk to me." Against my better judgment, I opened the door. He looked undone. Sweatpants, hoodie, hair uncombed, dark circles under his eyes. The woman from the bar was nowhere to be seen, and I knew without asking that whatever he'd been trying to prove that night had failed. "I'm ready now," he said the moment he saw me. "I know what I want. I want to marry you." I studied him quietly. The desperation in his eyes wasn't romantic, it was transactional. He wasn't choosing me. He was returning. "That's great," I said. "I'm glad you figured that out." Relief flooded his face. He stepped forward. "So we can start planning again. I know we lost the deposits, but we can." "No," I said. He froze. "What?" "I'm not marrying you." The words seemed to knock the air out of his lungs. "But I'm ready now." "I know," I replied. "And I'm not." "That doesn't make sense," he said, shaking his head. "You loved me." "I did," I said honestly. "And then you showed me how you think." "I made a mistake." "You did," I agreed. "And I made a decision based on that mistake." He laughed weakly, like this was some misunderstanding that could be talked through. "You're just being stubborn. You're punishing me." "I'm being honest," I said. "You didn't see me as a partner. You saw me as a safety net." "That's not true." "You asked to shop around before committing," I replied calmly. "That tells me everything I need to know." He started crying then, full, shaking sobs, promises spilled out in a rush, therapy, prenups, boundaries, anything I wanted. He would do anything he said, anything to fix this. "I want someone who never doubted they wanted to marry me," I said quietly. "That's not you." "That's not fair," he insisted. "Everyone has doubts." "Not everyone asks their fiancé for permission to date other women," I said. "There's a line." His mother called the next day. She didn't bother with pleasantries. "You're being incredibly cruel," she said. He admitted he was wrong. "What more do you want?" "Nothing," I replied. "I don't want anything from him." "So you're just going to throw away 3 years?" "He did that," I said. "I just made it permanent." She told me I'd regret it, that love required forgiveness, that I was too rigid. "With respect," I said, before she could continue, "he wasn't scared of commitment. He was scared of settling. There's a difference." She hung up. And that was the moment I felt it, the final click of closure settling into place. Not relief, not triumph, just certainty. I had done the right thing. The world didn't end after that call. It didn't even wobble. Life simply adjusted. The people who mattered most stopped asking questions once they understood the full story. Some friends drifted away quietly, choosing comfort over clarity. Others surprised me by standing closer than they ever had before. The split was almost clean, those who believed love meant endurance at any cost, and those who understood that respect was the cost of entry. 2 weeks after Charles showed up at my door, I ran into him again. It was a coffee shop near my office, one I usually avoided because it had been our place once. I almost turned around when I saw him standing in line, but something in me refused to retreat. I had already given up enough ground. He was there with Melissa, the same concerned expression on her face, like she was bracing for impact. Charles saw me immediately. His shoulders stiffened. For a moment, he looked like he might approach me. He didn't. I ordered my coffee and stood at the opposite end of the counter. When the barista called my name, Charles suddenly appeared beside me, too close, invading the space I'd fought hard to reclaim. "I'm seeing someone," he said abruptly. "Okay," I replied. "She's a lawyer," he added. "Very successful. She treats me really well." "That's great," I said. "I hope it works out." He frowned clearly, not getting the reaction he'd rehearsed. "Bet you regret your decision now." I looked at him, then really looked. The familiar face, the restless eyes, the subtle tension of someone still waiting to be chosen. "I don't," I said honestly. "I hope you're happy." "You don't mean that." "I do," I replied. "I'm not angry anymore." That seemed to throw him more than anything else. Anger, at least, would have meant I still cared in the way he wanted. Indifference wasn't something he knew how to argue with. "You did me a favor," I continued calmly. "You showed me who you were before we made a legal commitment. That's a gift." He didn't have a response. I took my coffee and left without looking back. Later, through mutual friends, I learned the truth. The lawyer had lasted less than 2 weeks. Apparently, Charles spent most of their dates talking about me, what he'd lost, what he almost had. She ended things quickly. He was back on the apps, still telling people I was the one who got away, still framing himself as the wounded party who'd been abandoned during a moment of vulnerability. Whatever helped him sleep at night. As for me, I was fine. Not euphoric, not devastated, just steady. I sold the couch he'd picked out because I hated looking at it. Repainted the bedroom. Small changes that reminded me the space was mine again. I wasn't dating yet. I didn't feel rushed to fill the silence. I was learning to sit comfortably inside it. What I learned from all of this was simple, even if it took me 31 years to truly understand it. When someone tells you who they are, believe them the first time. Self-respect isn't negotiable. You can't compromise on fundamental values and call it love. Charles wanted to explore his options before committing. He was free to do that, just not with me waiting on the sidelines. People still ask if I'd take him back if he tried again. The answer is no, not because I'm bitter, not because I'm punishing him, but because he fundamentally didn't respect me enough to consider how his request would make me feel. He expected me to accept it. I deserve better than that. And now finally I know it. That wedding never happened. That relationship ended with one conversation and a month of fallout. No dramatic revenge, no screaming matches, just a woman who respected herself enough to walk away when she realized she was being treated as an option. Sometimes that's enough.